All right, let's just dive right into this explainer, because we have a seriously profound biological mystery to unpack today. Have you ever actually stopped to wonder why the human body seems like this unfinished, highly flawed prototype? I mean, think about it. Every single species on this planet has spent millions of years adapting perfectly to their environments. Yet here we are standing out with some glaring, almost paradoxical physical flaws. So today we're going to put this under a rigorous academic lens and specifically explore how evolutionary biology and this brilliant concept called mismatch theory explains our bizarre design.
So here is how we're going to navigate all this. We'll start off by looking at the human anomaly itself, touch on the incredibly wild panspermia hypothesis, and then really ground ourselves in evolutionary mismatch theory and the anatomical trade-offs that come with it. Finally, we'll wrap up with what's known as the acceleration paradox.
Okay, kicking things off with the human anomaly. Because, frankly, compared to the rest of the natural world, we are a massive biological outlier.
This comparison right here perfectly illustrates the sheer scale of the anomaly. We are born incredibly helpless. Look at a horsefoal. It's born in 30 minutes and is literally up and walking around within the hour. Meanwhile, human babies are so utterly dependent they can't even hold their own heads up for months. Our biology is just vastly more vulnerable right out of the gate compared to other mammals whose bodies are perfectly calibrated for immediate survival.
And it definitely doesn't stop in infancy. Look at the sheer scale of our structural issues as adults. 80%, a staggering 80% of humans experience chronic back pain. Now, from an academic standpoint, when 4 out of 5 specimens share the exact same structural failure, you have to admit that's a flaw in the evolutionary blueprint, not just somebody having bad posture. Our spines are essentially a horizontal bridge that evolution just forcefully tried to stand upright.
And the list of glaring issues just goes on. We literally have to invent chemical pastes, sunscreen, just to survive our own sun without burning. Dogs and lizards don't do that. Childbirth for humans is uniquely the most dangerous of any mammal. We've got 30% of the global population walking around with immune systems that regularly declare all-out war on completely harmless stuff, like pollen. Mentally, we're the only animal burdened with existential dread because we're aware of our own mortality. And structurally, instead of balancing our ecosystem, we completely dismantle it, kind of like an invasive species. It really begs the question, how does an animal this ill-suited for its environment become the apex predator?
Which naturally brings us to some, let's just say, very out-of-the-box ideas, specifically the panspermia hypothesis.
These physical and behavioral quirks are so baffling that they actually led top-tier scientists to pitch some incredibly radical hypotheses. Take Francis Crick, yes, the Nobel laureate who literally helped decode DNA. He looked at our bizarre traits, teamed up with chemist Leslie Orgel in 1973, and proposed directed panspermia. The guy who maps the building blocks of life looked at us and thought, you know what? Maybe we were deliberately seeded here by an intelligent civilization from somewhere else in the galaxy. He felt our biology just didn't add up.
And his argument wasn't just a random guess. It was largely fueled by this highly suspicious timeline. So Earth forms as this toxic, molten hellscape about 4.5 billion years ago, right? But then just 700 million years later, complex organic chemistry and life just suddenly appear. In geological time, 700 million years is basically overnight. Life popped up almost the absolute second conditions allowed it to.
What adds a crazy amount of weight to this idea is that we know life can travel through the vacuum of space. Scientists examined the 1969 Murchison meteorite and found over 90 different amino acids inside, the exact building blocks of life, just riding around on a space rock. Plus, in 2019, we crashed an Israeli probe under the moon carrying microscopic tardigrades, and scientists are pretty confident those incredibly resilient little creatures survived the impact. So it really forces you to ask, is our biology so strange because it didn't actually originate here?
But, okay, while alien seeding is super fun to think about, mainstream biology has a much more robust, and honestly, maybe more fascinating answer: evolutionary mismatch theory. So, the core of this theory is that we aren't alien invaders. We are simply operating a biological prototype that hasn't received its final software update. It argues that traits which were totally advantageous in our ancient environment suddenly become detrimental when our physical structure or our surroundings change way faster than slow-moving evolution can adapt to.
Let's break down how this actually works by looking at anatomical trade-offs, because evolution, it turns out, is absolutely all about compromises.
When you apply mismatch theory, it methodically dismantles our mysteries by framing them as strict evolutionary trade-offs. That chronic back pain we talked about? Well, that is just the physical invoice coming due for bipedalism. We've only been walking upright for about 6 million years, so our spines are still catching up. Sunburn? That's the price we pay for thermoregulation. We traded our protective fur so we could sweat and outrun prey on the scorching savanna. And our destructive ecosystem behavior stems from brains that are hardwired entirely for short-term, small group survival. We are completely unequipped, biologically speaking, for long-term global ecosystem management.
Which brings us right back to the dangerous childbirth anomaly. Academics actually call this the obstetric dilemma, and it is a brutal evolutionary conflict. Basically, evolution was trying to do two totally conflicting things at once: make us much smarter by drastically increasing our brain size while simultaneously keeping us upright, which requires a narrower pelvis. The human pelvis simply got caught in the middle of these two demands, creating a dangerously tight birth canal.
So mismatch theory handles the physical stuff beautifully, but there's one massive anomaly that evolutionary biology still completely struggles with: the acceleration paradox.
The issue here is our incredible speed. When you stack us up against other highly intelligent animals, the contrast is just absurd. Dolphins have been around for 50 million years. Chimps have been using sticks for 4 million years, and they have pretty much plateaued in their tool development. Humans, on the other hand, we went from banging sharpened rocks together to building nuclear weapons and coding artificial intelligence in just 2 million years. In geological time, that is a literal blink of an eye. Just look at this acceleration. It's mind-boggling. 2 million years ago, our big tech breakthrough was a sharp rock. Then, basically yesterday, 200 years ago, we get railroads. 125 years ago, airplanes. 75 years ago, we achieved space travel. And just 35 years ago, the internet. Absolutely nothing in the 4 billion-year history of life on this planet has ever accelerated its own development the way humans have over the last 2 centuries. Now, to be fair, anthropologists do have some solid hypotheses to try and explain this. Cooking gave us a massive calorie boost, which was absolutely required for that rapid brain growth. We also got a lucky mutation in the FOXP2 gene that might have unlocked complex speech. Combine that with complex language and our totally unique ability to deliberately teach and stack knowledge across generations, and you get a huge leap forward. But even when you combine all of these factors, academics admit they still struggle to fully account for our explosive, unparalleled acceleration. The models just kind of break down.
And honestly, that leads us right to this really humbling realization. We're almost certainly a product of this planet, shaped by the same forces that shaped everything else here. But almost certainly is not definitely. Ultimately, academia has to be honest when the answers don't come out perfectly clean. We have to maintain a healthy curiosity about the gaps in our own evolutionary story, because asking those uncomfortable questions is exactly how rigorous science pushes forward.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final question to ponder. Are all these physical flaws, this chronic back pain, and the existential dread we carry around, are they simply the growing pains of a rapidly mismatched species? Or are they a clue to a much larger mystery about our place in the universe? Whatever the answer is, the science of our own flaws proves that humanity is, without a doubt, the absolute most fascinating anomaly on Earth. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the world around you.